Hello everyone, and welcome to today's session on critical thinking in your personnel. In this session, we'll define what critical thinking is, discuss its importance, and walk through the steps and skills needed to develop it. Whether you're a manager, team leader, or individual contributor, mastering critical thinking will help you make better decisions, solve problems effectively, and foster a more innovative and collaborative work environment. Let's dive in. Let's start by defining critical thinking. Critical thinking is the capacity to analyze information objectively and produce a reasoned decision. It entails assessing sources such as facts, data, observable occurrences, and study findings. This skill is essential in business, where decisions often have significant consequences. So, why is critical thinking so important in business? In today's fast-paced and complex work environment, good critical thinkers can derive acceptable conclusions from a collection of facts to solve issues. It also allows teams to work collaboratively by considering multiple viewpoints and making well-informed decisions. Furthermore, critical thinking helps distinguish between relevant and less helpful elements. Ultimately, it leads to better outcomes for your team and your organization. Critical thinking follows a structured approach to ensure sound decision-making. Here are the key steps. The first step is to identify the question or problem. Being as specific as possible here is key. Clearly defining the issue will make it easier to discover solutions or answers. Next, you'll need to collect data, opinions, and arguments from diverse sources. This ensures you have a well-rounded view of the situation. Once you've gathered your data, the next step is to analyze and evaluate it. Ask yourself key questions, such as, are the sources trustworthy? Are their conclusions based on evidence? Or are they just argumentative? Is there sufficient information or data to support the provided hypotheses? After this, you'll need to identify assumptions. Are you certain that the sources you discovered are unbiased? Are you certain that your search for answers wasn't skewed? These questions help ensure objectivity. Next, you will establish significance by asking key questions. What is the most significant piece of information? Is the sample size adequate? Is it possible that all viewpoints and arguments are relevant to the problem you're attempting to solve? Once you've done this, you move to make a decision and conclude. Determine the different alternative conclusions and evaluate which of them are suitably supported. Remember to weigh the benefits and drawbacks of all possible solutions before making decisions. Finally, present or communicate your conclusion to all stakeholders. Clear communication is essential to ensure everyone is on the same page. Now, let's look at some of the top critical thinking skills and features. These are the abilities that make someone a strong critical thinker. These skills include analysis, synthesis, evaluation, integrating, reasoning, deducing, inferring, generating, explanation, self-regulation, open-mindedness, problem-solving. The first skill is analysis, which means the capacity to thoroughly study information, whether it is an issue, a piece of data, or a text, is part of critical thinking. Furthermore, analytical skills allow you to study information, grasp what it means, and appropriately express the consequences of that knowledge to others. It involves research, interpretation, judgment, data analysis, ask probing questions, questioning evidence, identify patterns. The next skill is synthesis. Once the problem has been thoroughly examined and all relevant information has been evaluated, a choice on how to fix the problem and the starting steps to put the decision into action should be determined. If many alternatives exist, they should be analyzed and prioritized to determine the most advantageous option. Also, the SWOT analysis is one of the methods that may help you choose a problem solution since it identifies the solution's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. In addition, it is important to obtain evaluation skills, which means that deciding the worth, credibility, or strength of anything is significantly evaluated. Next, we have integrating skill. This is the process of linking and combining information or data to gain a better understanding of the relationship between the information. Besides, we also have several critical skills. These include reasoning. This is forming an argument through logical strengths. Deducing, the process of creating a rational opinion about something based on the evidence or information available. Inferring, this is figuring something out through reasoning based on ideas and assumptions. Generating, this skill helps produce new ideas, information, products, or ways of perceiving things. Next, we have explanation and self-regulation. In terms of explanation, this skill is communicating your findings and reasoning. About the remaining skill, self-regulation is the drive to monitor and correct your ways of thinking constantly. Another important skill is open-mindedness. Having an open mind means considering alternative options and points of view. In addition, to think critically, you must set aside any assumptions or judgments and just analyze the material presented to you. You must be impartial, examining ideas without prejudice. Key factors include fairness, diversity, objectivity, observation, inclusive, reflection, humility. The last important skill should be problem-solving. This is the ability to deal with unexpected problems and resolve conflicts. It entails analyzing an issue, developing and executing a solution, and evaluating the plan's success. Employers are looking for individuals who can think critically about information. They must also be able to devise realistic answers. Key factors should be considered, including attention to detail, clarification, decision-making, evaluation, identifying patterns, innovation. Now, let's shift our focus to encouraging employee feedback. To encourage team members to ask questions and engage in conversations, it is critical to create an environment where employees feel comfortable asking questions. This will lead to better collaboration and more innovative solutions. Encouraging employees to express their thoughts and questions is essential in fostering a culture of critical thinking. The following are some ideas to encourage employees to ask questions. Find out why employees don't speak up. Allow plenty of time. Eliminate the spotlight. Coach leaders to pose a question instead of calling for questions. In social media, don't set leaders up only as experts. Encourage them to ask questions. One way to encourage feedback is to find out why employees don't speak up. Hold focus groups or interviews to find out what prevents employees from participating. There will likely be some general issues, but your organization may have some unique aspects at work. Only by comprehending the obstacles will you be able to overcome them. Another tip is to allow plenty of time for discussions. Most leader events are too focused on speeches, with only a few minutes left at the end for Q&A. As a result, employees are discouraged from engaging once they watch the clock, just 10 more minutes. Make sure you provide enough time to establish the stage for a meaningful conversation, stimulate interaction, and develop momentum. Another strategy is to eliminate the spotlight. Even the most outgoing among us find it tough to raise their hands in front of the whole team. Therefore, creating a method for workers to communicate their queries or comments quietly is crucial. This helps employees feel safer expressing their thoughts and concerns. Instead, facilitate small group discussions by organizing breakout sessions at desks or in small numbers of 2 or 3 people, and invite employees to write down a couple of questions or concerns on index cards. Or we can use group representation. Ask a representative to offer a thought vocally from each selected group. It is safer to speak up because the ideas were formed in a group. Additionally, it is critical to coach leaders to pose a question instead of calling for questions. Even in the most open and welcoming environment, it is dangerous for employees to show possible ignorance by asking a question. However, if the leader asks a question, such as, "What are the challenges to accomplishing this goal?" employees have the chance to engage from a position of strength. In social media, don't set leaders up only as experts. Instead, encourage them to ask questions. When leaders appear to have all the answers, they model a know-it-all attitude that discourages others from asking questions. However, if leaders make it a habit to ask inquiries, for example, "What's your experience with this? What suggestions do you have on how we can address this?" they set a good example and foster a culture of curiosity and collaboration. Now, let's talk about how to get more feedback from your team. If you want more input from your team, You should first think about the steps you can take to make it happen. These strategies will assist you in doing your bit to increase the likelihood that your team will provide you with the feedback you seek. Have you recently solicited input from your team? There's a vast difference between wanting criticism and asking for it. If you want more feedback from your team, you have to ask them good and specific questions, such as, how could we improve the effectiveness of our team meetings? Do you want me to give you more or less directly on your work? What could I do to increase your enjoyment of your work? Do you believe the team and I are hearing your ideas? When do you have the most energy and concentrate during the day? What modifications might we make to accommodate this? When you receive feedback, be grateful and accepting of it. Consider the last time you offered someone negative feedback. Did they accept it right away? Or did they argue with you about it? They were perhaps a little defensive at first. If they were vehemently defensive, you'd probably think twice about offering them feedback again. Therefore, accepting feedback fosters growth and promotes open communication within organizations. In addition, you need to assume positive intent by considering every feedback from a team member to be a gift. This will show strong concern of employees to discuss issues with you for improvement. Once you've received feedback from your team, take action. Feedback is only valuable if it leads to change. Remember to note that they gave comments because they wanted to see circumstances evolve and improve. Therefore, ignoring feedback may discourage future input. Finally, it is important to turn feedback into action. Take a few minutes after receiving their response to discuss future measures and collaborate on possible solutions. This makes customers feel acknowledged and allows them to see what progress has been made in response to their comments immediately. Remember, fostering a culture of feedback and critical thinking is a continuous process, and the benefits to your team and organization are well worth the effort. In conclusion, critical thinking is a fundamental skill that enhances problem-solving, decision-making, and innovation in the workplace. By following structured steps and fostering a culture of open feedback, organizations can strengthen their team's ability to think critically and make better business decisions. Thank you for joining today's session. I hope you find these insights useful in your professional journey.